But the desire to have this shirt that was made by a Black company that included cotton sourced for African or African American cotton farmers really changed my life trajectory and really this is the impetus of this company. I wanted to have a t-shirt made in a particular way and bring it to the world in a way that honored people in land and reconnected Black folks to cotton in a more honorable way.
This episode of Voices from the Field is part of our continuing Soil to Skin Climate Beneficial Fiber podcast series, in which NCAT carbon farm planners Allison, Agee, and Danielle, Duni explore the relationships between soil health, fiber production, and market solutions. This work is funded through NCAT's Climate Beneficial Fiber Partnership with Colorado State University, Carbon Cycle Institute, Fibershed, Seed2Shirt, and New York Textile Lab. Today, Tameka Peoples walks us through her journey of sourcing a t-shirt made by a Black company that included cotton sourced from African or African American farmers and how that led her to develop a global cotton merchant company. Let's listen.
Hi, I'm Allison Agee.
And I'm Danielle Duni, and we're conservation agriculture planners in the Northern Great Plains.
In this episode, we speak with Tameka Peoples from Seed2Shirt and her vision for climate beneficial fiber. Yeah, well, to start, do you just want to introduce yourself and tell us about Seed2Shirt?
Yes, we'll start there. I'm Tameka Peoples. I'm founder and CEO of Seed2Shirt. I always tell people we're a company that is really looking to change how cotton is perceived, and we make things in the Black community. So, in short, we're a vertically integrated, eco-friendly, ethical apparel production company and a boutique cotton merchant firm. We do give brands like options on ethical and diverse options in their t-shirt supply and cotton supply chain needs. So, trying to tackle a little bit of raw commodity, a little bit of final product, and bring those two worlds together.
Oh, I like that. So how did you get started, like in this industry, and how did this all come together?
Yeah, I started this work in really just trying to source a t-shirt that was made in a really particular way. I did about 10 years in the Air Force. I have IT background. I really had no idea that I'd be doing anything with farming or agriculture and textile. But the desire to have this shirt that was made by a Black company that included cotton sourced for African or African American cotton farmers really changed my life trajectory and really this is the impetus of this company. I wanted to have a t-shirt made in a particular way and bring it to the world in a way that honored people in land and reconnected Black folks to cotton in a more honorable way.
I know, well, maybe Danielle, you're a better one to answer this question. But I know you really believe in like understanding the past to determine the future, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit more.
Well, it's when I first realized that I wanted to work with cotton and work with product. I initially had this really visceral connection to cotton, visceral reaction to cotton. And I think, just fundamentally, most Black folks here in the US have that same relationship when it comes to cotton. And it's because of this history that's tied to cotton here in the US in Black bodies. There's a really devastating past with enslaved people being brought here to work all types of crops, cotton being one of the major crops. This period of like in chattel enslavement and how much value was extracted and lives lost. And then understanding this history around this time period where African Americans, like after Reconstruction, were doing some amazing things with building community and building industry, just to see all of that destroyed and all of the opportunities and policy and resources kind of being turned back to pre-enslavement time, right? So it was this connection with understanding this past, trying to unpack my DNA reaction to cotton and where that really sat, with also understanding that there's some amazing things that many people have done in our history and lineage, certainly many African Americans have done in this country around textiles and with cotton. And, you know, learning the history of Warren C. Coleman, for instance, out of North Carolina, and this Black-owned vertical textile mill, or Frank White, who had the same type of silk mill. These are all just beautiful stories around resilience, and and building of something from nothing that really helped me ground myself in not having, one, that reaction to cotton, but two, wanting to see that same level of positive connection and impact in rebuilding, revitalization, but do it in kind of a 21st century model. So it was this Sankofa mindset of understanding your past to, reclaim and go forward into the future.
Yeah, I really like that. And just you have those examples, right, to look at and be like, okay, this is that we can do this. We have like the power to do this within us. I really like that a lot. I would love if you could tell us if you know the stories of, those founders of those mills. I would love to hear more about that.
Yes, I never get that question like that deep. Like, I love the history part of it. So
Yeah.
Warren C. Coleman was a formerly enslaved person who grew up in North Carolina, in this town called Belmont, North Carolina. In that area, his father was a Confederate general. So that backstory alone is just like, whoa, right? But at the time, he owned a lot of different shops in his community, and he was really wanting to make sure that Black farmers, Black seamstress, and others were able to still thrive and have a connection to the marketplace. So he and several other of his Masonic brothers and brothers were intentional about building a mill, a textile facility that could take in the cotton, refine the cotton, make products. So in this entire facility, he had the entire process of being able to do that with cotton. There were a lot of private investors that he was able to get support from, namely the Dukes, which does anybody know anything about the Dukes, tobacco and cotton, that's how they have become very famous. They were very instrumental in investing in those two agricultural commodities in North Carolina. So he really overcame a lot of things. There was times when they wouldn't let him open his facility because he didn't have a white man on his board. They wouldn't give him insurance. They wouldn't let him open his facility. It was all of that. So yeah, just his resiliency, and just to know that he was able to do that during that time, and to see like some of our farmers, even in the 21st century, being able to overcome just years of internal institutionalized racism within USDA in some instances, to overcome these challenges, right, that allowed them to still thrive. That's what I most like about the history, and understanding it, and understanding that it can be done. You just have to be willing to put in that work.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of people don't realize when they think about history that it wasn't that long ago, right? It was like not very long ago at all when we look at like our families and the generations past. And I think that's a very important piece for people to realize. I'm wondering if we can transition, you talked about that mill in the past, if we could talk about like kind of the issues in the cotton industry today and what you see there.
Well, the first thing I would say is that the cotton industry is in most instances a very close-knit community, right? The mills, the gins, the farmers, they all really, they know each other. They know each other for almost generations, right? The challenges I see there is that our Black cotton farmers who are still growing cotton, they're very resource constrained. They don't necessarily have the same level of types of support that they can tap into. The cotton industry is very siloed. It can be very siloed in some ways, but also very innovative. They have deep technology that can do all these great DNA mappings and do a bunch of other things that just the challenge in that industry is thinking about it in a more diverse, balanced ecosystem that values all the peoples that make it up, and all of the resources that would be necessary in order for cotton farmers to really thrive, and also for women to be kind of valued within that ecosystem. It is a very heavily male dominated industry, whether it be for the merchant companies who run the ability to sell and move the cotton, to the gins who are, you know, predominantly owned by men, and the farmers who typically are elder men farmers who are a part of the industry. So just thinking of ways that we can diversify and have a balanced approach to how cotton can be thought of in all of the sectors and all the ways it shows up on the global scale is really important. Um, and sometimes that is a problem, but that is also what I would call an opportunity. I never see problems as problems. I see them more as opportunities. So the Women in Cotton initiative that was started by the International Cotton Association, for instance, is a great example of, hey, we need to understand there's diversification. There is a need to, honor those who come from different backgrounds and different genealogies to be represented in this space and upheld and valued in this space. So there are some challenges, but there is great opportunity to see a tremendous change if we all can work together and bring that forward.
Mika, I noticed this with you when we're working together in group settings, that you do always bring such a positive light to our meetings, and always coming from that place of this is an opportunity that we can be stronger and figure this out. So I think that's deep rooted in how you look at things and move forward, and probably where Seed2Shirt really stemmed from is you had an issue and you thought, I'm going to solve this problem potentially single-handedly. Backing up our other two episodes that we've done through our soil to shirt part of our podcasts have been with Rebecca Burgess of Fibershed and Laura Sansone with the New York Textile Lab. And we talked about the issues that we see in the wool processing. Could you explain to us what it looks like from field or seed to shirt with cotton, and we can kind of look at how that compares to what we're doing with wool and the issues that we see processing fiber in general?
Well, cotton is one of those commodities that it has such volume that it is really hard to kind of segment into this one piece. And because cotton shows up in nearly 75% of the products that we use every day, the level of processing it might go through, let's say, to be used in a mattress is not the same level of process that might be used to go into an apparel product, right? There's some probably significant differences, right? But in general, I always tell people there's right around, oh my goodness, 5 or 6 stages of processes that cotton will go through before it ever becomes a product, for us, an apparel product. That first stage is, really about cleaning the cotton, making sure it can be used in a product, or a fiber product at the end stage. So it's the ginning and the baling of the cotton, and oftentimes that is, 100% of the time that is done at the cotton gin level. The farmer might plant many, many thousands of acres of cotton. They're bringing their cotton to this gin. It's being cleaned and identified as belonging to that farmer, and it goes through a level of grading, so that we know what type of quality and fiber strength and uniformity and color that cotton has, because those things will define how that fiber then is used by an end product consumer, right? So someone like who's making a t-shirt, they're not going to want, let's say, an extra long, very fine staple cotton that might be used in a luxury good. After the ginning stage, it goes on in classing stage, right? It's baled up, and it kind of is either sitting at a merchant's warehouse, and merchants typically deal with textile facilities and brands. A textile facility is responsible for what we would call spinning that fiber and making it into some type of usable next stage material. So they're typically spinning it into a yarn, so that it can become used in the other stage, which is the material making, right? So you have this very fine yarn and everyone sees it, it has all these twists and you can either crochet with it or what have you. That's kind of that middle ground of what happens to the cotton after it's ginned. The next step is kind of this weaving and knitting and creating these bolts of fabric. So we call that the weaving stage, which is also a textile process. These next few stages are all what we would call textile processes. So they're the weaving of the material, and it's you're creating weaving or knitting of the material in order to create a bolt of fabric. Now I will tell you, once the cotton hits this stage, it is very, very hard to have this level of traceability, because think of it like really, really big sewing machines. And I don't know if you ever use a sewing machine. There's a spindle at the top of it, and your bobbin is winding the yarn or the thread, right? Now imagine that on an industrialized scale. Oftentimes when a spinner or even a weaver, when they're doing that final material stage, they're not saying, oh, this cotton that's coming through this machine is now Greg's cotton who grew it in Alabama. That is not how they work. They're doing this thing that it's called mass balance. They're normally producing very high volume for a very particular customer who wants a particular end product. So they're only tuning these very large industrial machines to do normally very high volume runs. Think Gildan, think Hanes, think Adidas, think Nike, right? They're not making 1 to 2 shirts at a time. They're making hundreds of thousands of shirts in maybe jersey material. And so they're doing a lot of things in this middle ground stage to create the right type of yarn that will then become the right type of final knitted or woven product or fabric belt that would then go into the next stage, which we would call dyeing or finishing. The dyeing and finishing is another intense process, right? Um, Oftentimes that textile weaver or knitter is trying to understand what do you want to finish with, because they might be able to weave it in, they should be weaving it into this yarn and material. So that wicking feeling or that um, soft hand, like all of that, they're figuring out in between these two phases because they're trying to finish that material so that they can make it one bolt of material to then give it to what we call the cut, make, and trim. This is the final stage of garment making. The typical seamstress is at sewing machines with set patterns and producing, hundreds of thousands of t-shirts or, sweatpants or you name it. And then you have the final product, and that final product is going to retail or to a final merchanter. Um, Now for Seed2Shirt, we essentially touch every element of this process because we are someone who makes our product out of a material that goes through this process, or in this case, cotton. And we are kind of owning and controlling or dictating to our spinners and our weavers and our dyer and finishers and even our cut, make, and trim teams exactly what we want. And then oftentimes, if we're able, in our case, we were able to get a spinner and a weaver to exclusively spin and weave our cotton, we are then able to trace it back to our farmers. We are also a cotton merchant. So for those things that we're not using in the cotton process, we are moving raw cotton into two other brand partners. So that stage, right? No one ever really thinks about that. I know you guys are sitting here like, shit, my eyes are glossed over just hearing the process. But all we know is we got a nice shirt, has a nice feel, it is super soft. And if I wanted to, it won't be too, it wicks most of my sweat when I'm wearing it when I work out, right? No one's ever really unpacking the massness of this textile industry or this textile phase that happens before you ever touch your shirt.
The farmers that you work with through your farmer enrichment give back model or the Black Collective, are most of those going with this climate beneficial cotton verified program where you're able to look through traceability as a partnership with the Fibershed program? Could you talk more a little bit about that, as well as the farmers in your program, to give them some praise and love as we appreciate them?
Course. So one, yes, I would say, the climate beneficial verified model is really what I would call a partnership between Seed2Shirt and Fibershed and any other, scaled organization who's looking to bring this verified model to their producers. Our farmer enrichment program started in 2018, 2019, when we were doing this work on the ground with our farmers. We saw significant challenges with soil health, and this is even in certified GOTS organic cotton, right? So we developed this program to address the challenges our farmers were having with soil health management and whole farm management systems, tools and resources, and our micro grant program. But then when Fibershed discovered, Seed2Shirt, and we discovered Fibershed, there was this discussion around, hey, we're doing some great work in California with cotton growers, and we really love to understand if you'd be willing to adopt a climate beneficial verified model with the growers that you're working with. So the Black Collective was really born right around the same time our farmer enrichment program. We had decided to bring elements of that to the US, and within the US focused on Black cotton growers. We always had a plan to focus on Black cotton growers, but you have to really build a formation of what that's going to look like when you say support, right? You got to understand what the real needs are and all of these other things. So when we started to think about the idea that Black cotton growers were normally 5 to 10 years, if you will, behind or invited into models that would benefit the climate, and oftentimes aren't invited into these models, maybe because of farm size, we knew that we didn't want that to be the case. Our Black Collective was about a member-based approach to growers coming into the collective, knowing they were going to be supported by resources, in addition to offering a verified model that would give them an opportunity to be involved in climate change solutions, as well as look at opportunities for price premium for their cotton because they were doing so. So the partnership, if you will, between Seed2Shirt and Fibershed was really about bringing that model forward and onto more Black farmer landscapes here within the U.S. And just to shine some light on some great partnerships or great members in the collective that have agreed to do the climate beneficial verified model. This is even well before we got this beautiful grant opportunity. One of them is Bridgeforth Family Farms, who have been really, a great member of our team, probably one of the largest Black cotton growers in the U.S. And when I say member of the team, like they're just been an active Black collective member in that they are looking to adopt these models. They've been practicing some really great things on the ground, and adding another verified model like climate beneficial verification was a true opportunity for them, and of course a true opportunity for us. We have growers out of Georgia who have some great family farmlands, and the Morels who have their own land plus family farmlands that they're doing, and are very interested and a part of the Black Collective and looking to become fully climate beneficial verified. So it's these farmers and these farm families who, if we don't have any um, if we don't have a focus on them in order to bring those resources to them and let them be a part of these programs that really see them thrive in what they're already doing, that's what we're really most proud of. Climate Beneficial Verified started out as a program in California, but to see it going across the Southeast and going into states like Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, I know even on our own farm, Seed2Shirt has our own farm in North Carolina, we're going to, we are doing a fully climate beneficial verified model for our cotton, and even some of our other boutique growing practices. So yeah, I get really excited about that. And I'm really thankful that growers are looking towards innovative models for the future and looking at being true land stewards and healing the planet.
With our climate beneficial fiber project, I would love to hear how that's being received and where we're looking at, like what practices we're looking at on the ground for your farmers and how that is helping them.
Mm, Good question. So one, I would say it's been really good reception. Farmers who've been growing cotton for years are really looking at these opportunities and um, interested to figure out how they can become involved. As I mentioned, oftentimes these are smaller family plots, and it's kind of rethinking about how they do cotton in these landscapes. So they're very open to the opportunity, and they're most often looking forward to it. They're also, I would say, cautiously optimistic. Relationships with USDA in the past haven't always been as great. However, I believe there's great initiatives and partners on the ground looking to turn that around, and um, farmers are starting to be more active in these programs, and that's a good thing. Um, can you remind me the second part of your question?
Yeah, what are you seeing? I mean, it might be too early to know this, like on the ground, what people want to do for practice wise.
Great. I'm sorry. I was like, okay. So, precision nutrient management I see as a real interest area for our growers. Oftentimes they're not actually implementing those things because of the resources, but there's a great interest in adding that as a practice. Most of our growers are already doing cover cropping, sometimes not necessarily in indoor or around the cotton field. So adding this model to their cotton field is of great interest. Hedgerows and windbreaks, they're interested in them. Some of them haven't necessarily considered them. It's right by the fields, and there's nothing that's kind of blocking that windbreak. So they're often, the growers that we've rolled into the program are really interested in adding that as a practice. Strip till, no till. No till is probably a stretch. Strip till is much more well received, given if they have the support around the equipment. Good thing is we have great kind of pockets and clusters of cotton growers. Like these are row crop growers. If they're doing that, they normally have this very similar row crop growers around them. So they're able to share resources like strip till drills and that sort of thing. So I would say those are the top three practices. Did we know for a fully climate beneficial verified model, there's another level of investment around soil testing protocols that we do once they become a member of the Black Collective, those levels of soil protocol testing so that they can become fully climate beneficial verified is something that the Black Collective supports them on, which is a little bit outside of the scope of the grant, but these initial practices helps bridge them to that activity.
I would love to hear what your vision is long term, going forward. Like, how is this project helping like boost you towards that more like 10, 20-year vision for the work that you're doing?
Mm, Great question. We do our vision for Seed2Shirt is to be one of the most you know precise boutique cotton merchants focused on Black cotton farmers in the U.S. and globally, to really see how we can address large scale soil organic matter shifts for those farmers, which means we're doing things like reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but for us, it's kind of soil up approach. And to see, you know, I'd say over 100,000 cotton farmers between US and Africa that we can support into these practices and scale that type of cotton onto the market. So the vision is to really build out our collective so that we can support the growers in that way and increase more Black cotton for growers in the US as it's connected to our other global cotton system out of Africa. With respect to production, because y'all know we wear two different lanes here, right? We're talking cotton commodity versus production of product. We're looking to do more of a B2B model for our consumer facing t-shirt line as well as our soon to be released yarn. We're going to be producing boutique crocheting yarn that will be naturally dyed and from our North Carolina farm landscape. So we want to bring more ethical cotton products to market that are Black cotton provided either through our Black collective members and off of our farm landscape. So that's the goal for Seed2Shirt. The way that our work within the Climate Beneficial Partnership Grant helps to grow that is really expanding Black farmers' opportunities in these practices and not being excluded because of farm size, actually having the resources to start some of these practices, which will then encourage them to take the next step of joining the Black Collective and being fully climate beneficial verified. I will say of the growers who have signed up for the grant project, 100% of them want to also be CBV verified as well as be Black Collective members. So we're off to a good start.
Yeah, I like that's very exciting. I know we're kind of, with the markets kind of in the moving forward, we're kind of in a similar situation in the Northern Great Plains, right? Where we don't quite have that market developed like you guys do at Seed2Shirt, but everyone's really interested in building a new model going forward. I would love to hear more about like the global work you're doing with the Black Collective, and maybe about some of your work in Africa.
Yeah, thank you. We started our work in Africa and Burkina Faso. We have a 5-year partnership with the country and the cotton growers out of that country, which is well over 350,000. We specifically work with their certified organic cotton growers, so that's more around 8,000. It's growing, so they're probably at 11,000 this year. 58% of those are women. We we act as a cotton merchant for the cooperative, but we also act as on the ground partners with our farmer enrichment program. We do whole farm assessments. We're not necessarily doing climate beneficial verified in Burkina just yet, but we're, the idea is, resources. We never wanted to have this extractive model, so it was always about a circular model, how we give back, even though we're sourcing and using for our product. We also work with other brands to support their desire to source out of the West Africa and East Africa regions of Africa with respect to cotton. And most of them want really close connections with their farmers because of this desire to be more traceable, to eliminate greenwashing, to have measurable CSG goals, all of the things. But the idea that they can work much more directly and have a partner on the ground who can and will do that for them in places like Uganda, and places like Kenya, and places like Ghana. So we often act as a consultant and advisor on those projects in doing that on the ground work with those brand partners so that they can establish the right relationships on the ground and source the cotton in a more ethical and reciprocal way with the growers. So that's we have, I would say we're approved cotton merchants for 6 African countries now, but see if I can name them: Senegal, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Uganda. So we have some really strong international connections with West African and East African cotton growing communities, specifically centered around organic, but certainly just working to create the normal bridge. And as a global cotton merchant, it behooves us to do that so that we can work with the right partners on the ground to also expand how they source and connect with Africa.
Mika, thanks for sharing your wide reach that Seed2Shirt is able to grasp. How long did it take you to get to this point of being a global cotton merchant with 6 different countries?
Yeah, we started in 2017, officially founded in 2018. 19 and 20 is when we became a global cotton merchant. 20 pandemic, but we persisted and survived throughout, and kind of during the quiet expanded. So yeah, I would say 2018 officially.
Well, what we want to know to close us up is how can we and our listeners support your work moving forward and in our daily lives so that you can continue to grow and support everything that you're doing.
Mm, thank you for that. I'm I often am challenged with how to ask for the ask, right? But at the end of the day, I would say this, Seed2Shirt has ways that individuals and corporations can donate to the work that we're doing on the ground with our farmers. We do have a fiscal sponsor, so all your donations are 100% tax deductible. You can quite simply buy a shirt. A percentage of every portion of our sales or any portion of our products goes back to the farmer enrichment program that we're doing in the US as well as Africa. And if nothing else, share the story. Hear about what we're doing with this grant. These partners and this work was very intentional. We do realize we need institutional partners, and this 5-year project is a way for us to start to open the door, get more folks understanding and becoming climate beneficial verified, and growing this market. So share the story, learn about what we're doing, sign up for our newsletter.
Great. Well, we will link to Seed2Shirt, hopefully some of your farmers and what you're up to in the show notes. So that's where our listeners could go to subscribe to the newsletter. With that, I think we'll close. Thank you, Tameka. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Tameka.
Of course, thank you, ladies. This has been beautiful. I hope to have more conversations like this. Thank you guys for the work you're doing as well. Thanks, listeners. Hope to see y'all in those digital streets.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tameka.
Yeah, Tameka, is there anything specifically you would like us to link in the show notes that we haven't mentioned?
No, I think you guys got it all. You got the Black Collective, like under the farmer enrichment page. Yeah, I think we're good. I can make sure to just send you some follow-up links. Y'all give
Okay.
me
Yeah, if you think of
Yeah.
something, just let us
a day.
know. Yeah.
Okay.
I do know that
Yes.
within NCAT it came up that we should be using Seed2Shirt for our t-shirts. So hopefully moving forward,
Yes,
even
my goal is
NCAT
to
can
sell
support
out
you.
by the end of the quarter. That would be so
Yeah.
dope. And then we
Yeah.
could just go into production.
Right. We talked about that was a couple months ago, right? We were like looking at ordering some like t-shirts for everybody, and we're like, no, we need to order from Seed2Shirt. So I don't know where that conversation went. We should find out, but yeah.
Yeah, I love
We
it. I love it.
we can thank Linda Poole always keeping us,
North
walking
Star.
the talk.
Here's what I will say. Like, I've been working with the team to make sure we have like nonprofit discounts. We've been really getting some community partners who are like, we want to use your shirts, but it's like, don't worry, we're discounted. Just place your order and I'll give you a code, So yeah, let's talk about that. I'm down.
Cool.
Sounds
Cool. That'd be
great.
awesome.
Well, I'm sure they're
Yes.
editing this, that they'll ping that.
Right. I'm sorry. I forgot that you guys were still recording. My bad.
No, it's good. I
No,
like it. I think
no,
we
we
should
love
include
it.
it. The conversation after we like officially end the podcast is always the best part, and it's like never in the podcast,
No, it's great. So we'll just kind of click and let our listeners know you do have a little bit of a code.
Right? In fact, I'm thinking maybe that's the plug. Maybe we say there'll be for folks who order through whatever. I never think to do that, like create a discount code when I'm on a podcast. I just do the podcast because I love talking to folk. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's a great idea.
So we'll look for your discount code and we'll link it in the show notes, and then we'll go from
Yes,
there.
I love it. I love it. Done.
Okay, great.
All right,
Enjoy your
guys.
Friday, Tameka. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. You do the same. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
The Climate Beneficial Fiber Partnership is funded by USDA's Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities. Be sure to check back for the other episodes of the Soil to Skin Climate Beneficial Fiber podcast series. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.